This is the final part, or this is the first part of our report in relation to Sigberg's journal. Or rather, this is the compilation of entries from the first part of the journal that has been arranged according to our analysis. Consequently, the journal entries are considerably subjective. They also contain huge amounts of text, and we had to check through them several times for consistency, not to mention a lack of manpower. That is why we are unable to provide all the journal entries at this time. Nevertheless, we believe that the most crucial periods of Venne's life are year 50 and year 55. Those are the periods when Venne slashed her wrist at the age of 12 and underwent Serahuman cloning at the age of 17. That is correct. Those two events were the most influential in bringing about major changes in Venne. Basically, after checking through the journal entries in sequence, starting from the time she was born, we found that the entries from just before year 50 onward highlight important milestones portraying to Venne's condition. I understand. Let me see the entries then. Alright. Year 49, November 5th. Venne looks to be taking to herself lately, although she would not say anything in front of us. Whenever she sees nobody looking at her, she would murmur to herself while unknowingly being observed by my subordinates. I would never see her behave like this before. I should get to the bottom of this. It would seem that Venne's monologues might be more than just monologues. Although she is clearly acting strange, she is not speaking gibberish or undergoing some sort of self-reflection by speaking her thoughts aloud. Rather, from the looks of her condition alone, it would appear that she is suffering from a paradigmatic schizophrenia. Because of that, she has found an imaginary friend and has been holding conversations with the friend. Well, whatever it is, there is no doubt that something is happening within Venne. I will continue to monitor her closely and may need to perform a psychiatric examination on her, depending on her condition. Venne's activity level is unusually high. She has turned from being normally reserved to being hyperactive all of a sudden. That unprecedented behavior and abrupt change in her has left me worried. Venne showed defiance towards my subordinates for the first time today, much to my surprise. But I believe that is a stage in life which everyone will eventually go through, and is unlikely to avoid. She has reached the rebellious age of adolescence, and I will need to rethink my policy of nurturing her from now on. Recently, Venne's monologues have considerably decreased. Well, that is good for now. I cannot take that as a sign of her rebellious stage is close to its end, and forget about it. It has been 3 months since Venne reached the rebellious age of adolescence. Or shall I say, it has been 3 months since I first believed that was the case. The thing is, even though Venne is undergoing a change in herself, whether or not she is actually in her rebellious stage is somewhat a question in itself. It is true that her defiance toward my subordinates back then could naturally be seen as a thought of an act of teenage rebellions. However, after looking at that incident in its entirety, I realized that something is amiss. Her rebellious behavior was inconsistent. There we go. Couldn't fucking read that for a moment there. And that there was notable intervals which her original reserved behavior surfaced. Above all, her behavior was more than just rebellious. There was a sort of fierce resolve in her. We were in for a shock. Venne's room was littered all over with torn plush toys. From this, I could pretty much tell that she is clearly intent on rebellion against us. Nonetheless, Vene was already in a blank state of mind by the time we approached her, and no matter how we asked her what happened, she would not say a word. I will need to take precautions from this point forward. Vene occasionally threw tantrums without warning. Those occasions were probably similar back when she tore her plush toys. It pretty much looks to me that Vene's living environment is the cause of stress and violence in her. In fact, today was my first time my subordinate suggested that we seek to improve her living conditions. Well, I will think about it. We were in for another shock. Vene cut both her wrists. That incident hit us hard. My subordinates checked on her, as usual, when they found to their horror that she has 3 cuts on each of her wrists. She was staring at the cuts while holding a cutter. Unfortunately, the cuts were shallow and did not require stitches. However, the problem lies not with the seriousness of the cuts, but with her behavior itself. I gathered my subordinates to discuss on how to deal with her. It was decided that we should keep all sharp objects, including the cutter, away from her for now. We were naive. Our actions of keeping all sharp objects away from Vene was but a temporary solution. With no sharp objects to cut herself, she soon grew frustrated and began knocking her head against the wall all of a sudden. My subordinates immediately stopped her upon noticing that, and thankfully her head only suffered light bruises due to the thick wallpaper covering the wooden wall. We will request for more manpower and security cameras to monitor Vene 24 hours a day. Vene threw a tantrum once again. This was the 5th time since a month ago. Seeing that she could be considered a psychiatric patient with a tendency to repeatedly harm herself, I have thought about restraining her in bed. But then again, she is Seraphic Blue, and the instrument of the world's salvation. Since she is an existence that bears the all-importance responsibility of defeating the Gaia cancers and saving the world, how can I possibly do the foolish thing of worsening her condition by restraining her in bed? It was the 6th time she threw a tantrum. Although my superiors initially trusted me and did not question me anything about her, her patience is most likely wearing thin by now. The other day, Ralph, the chairman of the CMGC, invited me to dinner almost immediately after he was discharged from the hospital. It was during the dinner that he indirectly gave me a warning. Were my actions of faithfully grooming her into the absolute instrument of the world's salvation a mistake? But it is clear that nothing fruitful would come about if a being who shoulders a huge responsibility of saving the world were to have a normal human personality, would it? Well, regardless, there is no denying that I am in hot water at the moment. Everything will depend on Vene's psychiatric examination tomorrow. The psychiatrist said this to me before leaving. While the final results will only be known sometime later, there is a suspicion that she has a dual personality. That sounded reasonable enough. I have all along felt that Vene has altered too much between her normally reserved self and her highly agitated self. So it would seem that it would make sense that she has a dual personality. I will await the results of her psychiatric examination. Today is what I call the fated day. I want to attend a meeting at the headquarters. During my absence, 2 of my subordinates were not around to monitor Vene, as one of them have already taken leave while the other suddenly fell ill. As a result, the surveillance of Vene was not as tight as usual. That was where Vene saw an opportunity. It was just as I was returning from the meeting As my subordinates went into her room to check on her, she suddenly made a break for the door. They caught hold of her, but she managed to break free and ran out of her room. Not long after, she grabbed a fruit knife that she found on the table and slashed her wrist with it. That was where her extremely agitated self reached her limits. She was greeted with pressure from my subordinates, who were not about to go easy on her, before falling to the floor and losing subconsciousness with blood loss continuously out of her deep wounds. Thankfully, I had earlier added a few paramedics into my team. They swiftly attended to her, and the danger was averted. My subordinates once again advised me to improve her living conditions. Now that things have come to this, I could not afford to delay any further. I would not allow Vene to die. Hence, I listened to their advice, proposed a social-emotional development program for Vene, with Fritz chosen to socialize with her. Come tomorrow morning, I will arrange my first meal with Fritz in a long while, before bringing him here. Oh, and the psychiatrics just told me the results of Vene's psychiatric examination. He said there is now a strong likelihood she has a dual personality. She will need utmost care and attention. I have been thinking the whole day about what the psychiatric told me yesterday. Is Vene's recent behavior truly hers, or is it the behavior of her dual personality, which has tried time and again to harm herself, including yesterday's incident? Okay, I just realized I am a big dumb fucking idiot. Sigberg, I think I realize Sigberg's motivation now. Back in the few episodes, I mentioned that the Sigberg, when I was theorizing about the passwords, I was being a fucking idiot. It's the complete opposite. Sigberg wants the world to be saved. Okay. At all costs. So he's doing this for the sake that Vene will have that particular mindset, even though it may backfire because of the whole thing going on right now. I would like to think that the latter be the case. At any rate, Vene's life will be in grave danger if this condition of hers persists. As reluctant as I am to implement a social-emotional development program for her, I have no choice but to do it and hope it will help to improve her condition. In addition, Fritz has agreed to take part in the program. Pity he will no longer get to sit down with me for meals, though. Interesting. Pity. It has been half a year since the social-emotional program, or development program, began. Vene's violent self looks to have all but disappeared, and the most recent psychiatric examination showed virtually no signs of a dual personality in her. And above all, she began to have emotions of her own. While I believe that emotions are the root of all... and were something I did not want Vene to have at all costs, I cannot deny that the lack of emotions in Vene were the cause of all the stress in her, and that the only way to get rid of the stress was really to instill emotions in her. So I have mixed feelings about the program. By the way, I am a little worried about what was written in the comment section of the report of Vene's latest psychiatric examination. It states that although there are presently no signs of Vene's other self appearing, that does not mean that her other self is gone. I do not like how the psychiatrics tried to crack a joke. Today marked the end of the Vene's social-emotional program. While both Fritz and Vene looked unwillingly to part ways with each other, the fact is that Fritz had served his purpose. Vene had already gained human traits that have all but assured that her life is no longer under direct threat. However, she is still in the stages of puberty. I will have to deal with the future problems with regards to her and will need to look and plan ahead. It looks to me that Vene's mood has somewhat turned gloomy. In the past, it was neither bright nor gloomy, but purely emotionless. Now it seems that Vene harbors negative emotions, and whenever we tried to asking her how she felt, whether or not she felt sad, she would keep her mouth closed and would not say a word. However, her facial expression clearly speaks for itself. This is why I am opposed to Vene gaining human emotions. They are, after all, the root of all evil. Interesting. Although the days since Vene and Fritz separated from each other have remained peaceful, I sensed something unusual in her behavior today. She began to talk to herself once again, and just like before, she was talking to an imaginary friend. As unpleasant as it may be, that friend is most likely her other self, who still exists as suggested by the results of Vene's psychiatric examination 2 years ago. I will need to pay closer attention to her from now on. More than half a year has passed since Vene began talking to herself. Even then, though, there has been no sort of violence from her, and things have surprisingly still remained peaceful until today. Also, we have stopped using the hidden microphone for recording her monologues, as she is somewhat able to sense whether or not that microphone is turned on, and would keep it completely silent wherever it is on. As a result, we have been listening to her monologues with our own ears. And today was the day we finally heard Vene call her imaginary friend by her name. That name is Ern. I have been thinking the whole day about the name Ern. She is very likely to be Vene's other self, and an existence that I have no idea of until now. That being said, the name Ern has to come from somewhere. Yes, there is a hidden meaning behind the name, and so I spent the whole day pondering it before realizing what it could refer to. The name Ern is most probably pronounced with the letter in a favorite foreign language of mine. If it is true that Vene takes interest in this language due to my influence over her, and assuming my thoughts about the name are right, there has to be a significance behind the name R, which Vene gave her. I will have to continue looking into this without fail. Who would have thought my daughter would send chills down my spine? I eventually gave up on figuring out on my own and resorted to asking Vene directly about the true meaning of the name Ern. That was when she replied with these words that she left me dumbfounded. "You have no right to know, fool." I look in her eyes, and the tone of her voice were marred with pure hatred, and were unlike those of her normal self. Yes, that was Ern's reply. Her unexpected response sent chills down my spine. I could not follow up on that afterwards. I have found an answer with regard to Ern, Vene's other self. I have come to know the meaning of her name, the significance of her existence, and the details of her emergence. Simply put, she is Vene's evil half, a rough and violent personality that acted as a way to maintain Vene's health. That role of Ern was in the past, though the significance of Ern's... You know what? It's pronounced R, right? So, I don't know. Ern sounds like a better whatever. Ern, I'm just going to continue calling her Ern. Existence changed from the time Vene first met Fritz, or should I say the old Ern is not exactly Ern, but something I would call a prototype Ern. The fact that Vene never called Ern by her name from the time she began talking to herself till about half a year ago probably shows that Ern might not have a name back then. Prototype Ern was Vene's second personality that served to let out all of Vene's accumulated on behalf of Vene. She was an existence that came about as a result of my policy to groom Vene into shutting her heart from all emotions and become the perfect instrument of the world's salvation. Whenever a person feels stress, it would accumulate in his or her body, and he or she can either let out or leave it alone. In Vene's case, since she was trained to shut her heart from all emotions, she can only be able to accumulate stress, but not be able to vent it out. and the stress is a risk factor that can cause serious damage to your heart, body, and soul if it is not let out and remains in one's body for a prolonged period of time. One could say that stress is like a bomb. And so, prototype Urn was instinctively created by Vene as an outlet for her stress. Yes, Vene's violent behavior, which initially thought to be caused by her having reached the rebellious age of adolescence, was actually the behavior of prototype Urn. All of Vene's actions of self-injury and violence were Urn's prototype rough ways of releasing Vene's stress. That includes, of course, the slashes on her wrist and with the knife back then. However, after going through the social-emotional programming, Vene began to have emotions. While that gave Vene the ability to let out stress on her own and rendering prototype Urn useless, it did not cause prototype Urn to disappear, as she continued to exist within Vene's mind. No, rather, I should say that Vene probably decided to keep her existence in the event that she needed her for another purpose, and that was when prototype Urn evolved into Urn. Vene's time with Fritz caused her to open up her heart a little. As a result, after she was separated from him, she lost hope in life upon grasping the reality of her destiny. Since then, Vene became as gloomy as night. Her ability to embrace emotions again, as well as the instabilities of puberty, caused her to sulk over her destiny every day while harboring feelings of despair and resentment. That was the case even today. It will most likely remain so in the days to follow. It would also seem that a strong desire has been born out of Vene's negative emotions accumulated in her. Consequently, she, as Seraphic Blue, would have nothing to do with that inner desire of hers, or any other desires that would compromise her mission. That was where she turned to Urn. By forcing her taboo desires of refusal entirely upon Urn, Vene would be able to give the excuse that her dirty behavior is actually Urn's, while keeping a clean slate as Seraphic Blue. Consequently, she decided that as Seraphic Blue, she would have nothing to do with that inner desire of hers, or any other desires that would compromise her mission. That was when she turned to Urn. By forcing her taboo desire of refusal entirely upon Urn, she will be able to give the excuse of her sinful behavior that is actually Urn's, while keeping a clean slate as Seraphic Blue. That is how the name R came about. R for refusal. That is without doubt the significance of R's existence. You know what? Okay, that makes sense. Story-wise, I will now call her R from now on. Yeah. She is the manifestation of Vene's desire of refusal. Her negative emotions accumulated in her as such as pessimism and despair. She plays the role of the heel for the sake of preserving Vene's identity of Seraphic Blue. She is refused Seraphic Blue. As time passed, though, the relationship between Vene and R has seen a notable change. Originally, Vene was in control over R, but the negative emotions accumulated in Vene gave strength to R. This caused R to start having the desire to take over Vene, and thus began the discord between Vene and R. Well, that is to be expected at any rate. R is, after all, Vene's true self. It is entirely natural for the true self to want to be the one in control. While the discord between Vene and R continues today, I am not going to just look on and do nothing. Should R become the one in full control over Vene, my plans will all be for naught, and the world will ultimately be destroyed. But then again, the game would be boring if I side entirely with Vene. Why? Because that would mean R would not be able to win against Vene. The thing is, R is my second daughter. I have also flawlessly raised Vene to be resilient, and that could also be applied to R. As such, I expect both Vene and R to put up a good fight, and do not expect either of them to falter easily. In other words, I want excitement. I want to see just how the two of them will proceed from here on out, and how it will all end. Damn. These are all the journal entries that we have compiled so far. So what is this game? I feel like there's more to it other than creating the instrument of the world's salvation. R. Venice second personality. It looks like there are still mysteries left to be solved. R was originally a second personality of Vene, perceived within Vene's mind. So, how did R become a separate existence from Vene and became imprisoned within the original Vene? Perhaps the answers to that and everything else lie in the rest of this journal. By the way, I think I will split up, make another edit, split this into this long episode into 2 episodes. I don't know the episode count. I kind of lost track. Lol. We've been recording for pretty fucking long. Our analysis of the journal is still ongoing, so it is only a matter of time before we eventually get all of the answers. By the way, Madam Daisy. Yes? We found Sigberg's favorite novel in his room. Canas Vos. Yes. Scribbles believed to be made by him were also found in the pages of the novel depicting the prison librarian's last scene. I wondered just how unpredictable Sigberg could be. Well, at least he had some intention of saving the world. What he really did was to make Vene a slave, though. He made her become accustomed to life in prison, so much so that she lost the will to live freely. Indeed, that is the wicked game in which Vene is currently trapped. In the end, it was all for his own enjoyment. I agree. That is all from me. Please continue to analyze the journal. Certainly. Let's go, Gerald. Yes. At any rate, this is what I have to say about the events leading to Vene's current state. They were not a cause of nature taking its course. Rather, they were all a man-made crisis. Man-made crisis. Alright, so I guess I'll go on for like maybe 20 more minutes unless you're gonna keep on with the cutscenes. Vene. Sigh. To think you would be here yet of all auto text. I believe I said before that you shouldn't be spending too much time here. If anything, this place is nothing more than a pathway built for the purpose of maintenance of the structures here. But to me, this is the best place to be. Here, I can have a good view of the sky and feel the smooth breeze blowing at me. I could also relieve myself of all unpleasant thoughts in my head and sort of let them vanish into the sky. Well, perhaps I could do the same for this life of mine. That sounds disturbing. You're not planning jumping off here, are you? Don't worry. I would only end up on the ground if I were to do that. What I would rather like to do is to ascend to the sky. So you couldn't reveal the truth to her. Yes, I might have wasted my last chance to tell her. In the end, I'm still a helpless person. I've always wanted to tell her since the devil's assault here, but I didn't have the courage to do that. And now, all I could do is stare at the sky where Vene and her friends are currently engaged in battle. You mean that dark sky? Well, not everyone will agree with me on this, but that looks to be an omen of Gaia's extinction. It's, at any rate, the stage of Vene's final battle. Final battle, huh? Honestly speaking, I can't help but prepare for the worst rather than hope for the best. I just can't bring myself to think too far into the future at this point. After all, what have we, the FESC section, done to her? In what way have we forced her into doing things against her own desires? And what is ultimately going to happen out of that? We are sinners, while she is our cross to bear. Yeah, you could say that. This reminds me of my father. Sigbury? Yeah. He was the one who forced Vena to reject human emotions and train her to become the instrument of the world's salvation. But in truth, that might well be the ideal path of salvation to take for her. After all, had she not been an instrument devoid of the human heart, she would possibly not have come this far. I suppose so. If she were to embrace her emotions now, she would only be in pain and in grief. She would regret having been born, and would only hate herself continuously for that. She would have thought that she would be better off not being born into this world. For the best form of salvation is perhaps not to exist, and when death is not an option, there is at least the next best form of salvation. And that is to abandon the heart and not feel anything. As people, it's easier to hate than to love. Therefore, by giving up on the heart and discarding all aspects of being human, that ought to be sufficient form of salvation. And no one has the right to criticize anyone for doing that. I don't know if my father thought that way, but at the very least, this is what he would certainly say to me if he were still alive. In the end, I am just a greenhorn like always. My half-heartedness is causing me to be beating around the bush with her. She could not live, nor could she die. And yet, with sins piling up on me, one after another, I have been a burden to her as she lays trapped between life and death. Excuse me, it's been a long session, man. That includes now. Well, I can understand if Vene were to feel this way, but you? At any rate, there's not much anyone can do about her circumstances, not even you. Nonetheless, supposing the world is saved and Vene comes back, you will tell her the truth, alright? Yes, that is something I, or anyone in my shoes, will have to reveal eventually. I'll make sure to do it right this time, and take responsibilities for my sins. Once this battle is over, and the Seraph of the world's salvation returns, I will start by saying words of gratitude in a tactful manner before revealing the cold, hard truth to her. Sorry to say, but I gotta go. It's almost time for my meeting. Thanks for lending an ear to me. Don't let it get to you too much, okay? You're only going to break down at this point. Well, I could care less about my health. Whatever it is, don't hesitate to approach me. Whenever you need a listening ear. You got that? Don't keep anything to yourself. Auto text. I didn't get the last bit of words. Dear, say part, please. If only I did. Excuse me. If only I didn't know the truth. How am I even supposed to welcome Vene back with that? Damn it. Well, the moment I see a save point, I'm just ending the episode. You heed to the grim sky without using your wings as your shoulder, just about everything by yourself. Well, I can understand that. After all, you don't really wish to be with me at the moment. All you can care about now is your duty as Seraphic Blue. Thus, I swear with all my heart that I will wait for your return. Regardless of whether or not the world lives on, you are the only one I hold dear. And all I want to do is to be able to convey my sincere feelings for you under the sky. Sorry, Vene. Forgive me for selfishly asking you to live with me without consideration for your circumstances back then. If the best form of salvation is what you desire, and is what will make you happy, then I will be more than willing to accompany you without hesitation. It's sad to be alone at any rate. Let's die together. Vene and Bash. Report of medical checkup results. With regard to her progressive kernel soul separation disease, her axis is gradually deteriorating, perhaps due to the incomplete cloning process. This is all auto text. Impossible to perform cloning again. Estimate to live for 3 more years and die at the age of 23. Damn. Oh, that's his secret. Ooh. That episode, Seraphic Blue, Memories and Blue Sky, Vene and Bash. Wings, blue sky, and the heart to soar. I don't want any of those. All I want is to settle everything once and for all. I shall proceed to the final showdown. I shall end this destiny of mine. And I shall return to the distant blue sky where only I belong. Cradle of Souls. Okay. Oh boy, is this another dungeon or is this just a straight path to the end? Well, anyway, I will take a break here.